So typically, we've done a fairly simple, light format of doing an update on anything new that we have from our perspectives as in the Vermont legislature, anything new that we're aware of or others are aware of to share around the federal response and local stuff and Q&A. And frankly, like some of the Q&A comes in during the updates has been the pattern that we've seen that works. And as long as we're able to keep that moving in a way that's productive, we'll probably follow the same basic format. And I don't know if Molly, would you like to, is there anything that you would like to offer first on a legislative update?
Well, not at this point, because I think, the things that we've been doing in transportation are not like critical right at this moment. There's some interesting things that I can talk about a little later, but I think it would be more helpful for people to, like, you have the overview of all what's happening with a variety of different committees that are specific to this crisis.
Emily, anything for you?
I would share two things. One, we are getting, we did not pass any new legislation last week, and we probably won't for a few more weeks. We sort of did our emergency response, and now we're really sort of focusing in on what needs to get done and finalizing how the House will actually function. There's still a lot of sort of learning of new technologies. We're doing voting trainings, things like that. We know how to vote, we just don't know how to use the software to vote. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee now, and we've been talking about the really substantial changes in Welcome Faith and how we are going to be doing our work in the future. So we're going to experience a really significant drop in revenues to the state because of meals and rooms taxes going on, because everyone else's income is going down, basically. So meals and rooms taxes are going down, incomes are going down, et cetera. And so as we experience a real drop in revenues, what does that mean about the things that we were already planning on doing? And how might those need to shift? And then at the same time, we're having this huge infusion of cash from the federal government that needs to be used for new activities. We can't use it for previously obligated funds. So that means that we have this huge pot for creativity and crisis relief, and then we have less money for the things that we've always done. And so right now, it feels like everything is up in the air. There are many opportunities available to us, especially given how much money we are seeing that will be going out via unemployment insurance to people. That's really, for some folks, that's gonna be more than they were getting working. For a lot of folks, it'll be the same amount. And so given that level of financial security that we're gonna see through this crisis, it's gonna be really interesting to see what opportunities are available to us in state government as we really possibly rethink how we do our work. It is a turning point though, and so it's possible that we'll just sort of go down the same road we've always gone down. And that's where it's sort of where we're sitting. And then the last thing that I think it's really important to name is that this is all, the federal money is brand new, right? So the law just, it just passed last week. And so I'm seeing a lot of urgency on behalf of, our community about making sure that, like, applying for loans and applying for unemployment, all those things. And I really, really get it. Everything feels very urgent to me right now. And I still have a job. So I can't imagine how incredibly urgent things feel to people who don't have jobs or whose income has bottomed out. But the Department of Labor is genuinely doing the very best they can. They have processed more unemployment claims in the last 2 weeks than they did all of last year. And so there's only so fast that a system can catch up and staff up, and they are going as fast as they possibly can. I am the first to criticize bad administration in state government, I promise, and they are really doing the best they can. And so really encourage people to sort of, as much as you can, expand your patience enough that it will touch other people whose patience can also be expanded. Because the urgency, and I know a lot of people are sort of calling in unemployment claims when they are self-employed, which are not being processed yet at all, which is sort of flooding the claims desk for people who are unemployed employees. And so it's you know, it's a messy time. And in this case, we really are doing the best we can, even though I will be the first to admit we don't always. Tristan.
Yep, and I'll add, in the Commerce Committee meeting on Wednesday, we heard from the acting commissioner of the Department of Labor. I echo everything that Emily said. Just to add that I believe that as of yesterday, they are now prepared to handle the UI, unemployment insurance, the support for independent contractors, 1099 employees that was new under the federal rules to expand that relief, and they didn't have any mechanism in place when the federal law changed to be ready to do that. They've put that in place and are beginning to process claims for independent contractors, 1099 employees, which is a big deal and really important. And the other piece that relates more broadly to the work of the legislative process, but I'll bring it up here, is that so much is new, as Emily said, that part of our job right now is just to try to understand what's actually happening, like how are things unrolling, and be attuned for places where problems are being created in the newness. And so certainly for the Department of Labor, beyond just the call volume of what they're dealing with, and I think that the commissioner said that they had added 80 new staff to, or 80 staff resources, 80 full-time staff resources to the existing call system, all of whom were trained at a level that met some federal standards around unemployment and benefit processing, as part of their scaling up. But beyond just the hearing from them how things are going, we as the legislators rooted in our local communities need to actually be keeping track of and sharing with each other the anomalies, the friction points, the things that just don't seem to be working the way it's been talked about, and be able to work with the administration then to figure out, is that a systemic issue? Is it something that can easily be problem solved? Does it require a change in law? Some sort of legislative action. So it's super important for us to hear from people who are encountering problems in the system, whether it is the unemployment process, the independent contractor rules, or bank loans or other things. We do need to hear as things come up for people. We also heard from a representative of the banking industry, and as of Wednesday, the banks knew that they were going to be required to start processing SBA loans. A lot of the federal relief money for businesses is going through the Small Business Administration process, and when that goes through local lenders. And as of Wednesday, they knew they'd have to take applications on Friday, but as of Wednesday, they didn't have final guidance from Treasury on exactly what that meant. They got that guidance Thursday afternoon, almost evening, and on Friday, we're required to start taking applications. There's going to be places where that's confusing. I was on a Friday call, and one of the Vermont administrators for the SBA was telling people where to go to the website to find out who are SBA approved lenders, but that website was not accurate because things were shifting so quickly as banks and branches were trying to adjust to the new rules and understand how to meet their customers. So it's going to take a few days, if not a little longer, for that system to stabilize as the banks figure out the ground rules for how they should engage in supporting employers through the two different relief programs that they have access to, and as the UI and the Department of Labor continue to try to navigate the changes that the law has made to eligibility for them as well. So anything we'll get to in the Q&A, we'll get to specific questions that should be flagged, but that's just a broad overview of kind of what we're seeing and what are the big changes between this week and last week.
And I would just like to add something, Tristan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you done?
Yep.
I just want to sort of in a big picture area, one of the challenges that we're encountering in transportation is, first of all, not knowing what's happening with all this federal money, when is it coming, how can we use it, but also the administration is sort of coming to us with a very pared down version of the transportation bill that had already passed the House and passed through the Appropriations Committee, passed House Committee and the Appropriations Committee, but hadn't actually passed the House yet. And in one way, you could look at it as sort of a power grab by the administration to say, all these things that you were going to do that we didn't like, we're just going to delete them because we're trying to just get things streamlined and get things passed fast. And we don't want to have any conflict with the Senate. We just want to get this through fast. So we're trying to sort of sort out, being responsive to the crisis at hand and to the process, but also not wanting to let some of our priorities go by the wayside, regarding some money we put into public transit and other sort of climate mitigating measures that were really important to our committee. So that's just sort of a big picture of the landscape of sort of not exactly knowing. We're having like individual conversations about how to proceed, but.
Yeah, and actually, Molly, thank you for saying that, because I think that, and Emily spoke to this a little bit about the fact that the House is going to start to train on how the system that we're going to use for remote voting. We have not yet, as on the House side of the legislature, set in motion remote voting. We haven't actually practiced remote voting yet in committee or thought through what it will look like to bring bills to the floor and how to navigate the balance point between what other work we should do beyond the COVID response. And Molly's absolutely right that if we never get there, there's a degree to which really important policy initiatives around climate change and all kinds of other things, but climate change comes right to the front for me in terms of the transportation bill. We're potentially sacrificing a year's worth of momentum on really important issues that Vermonters care about, because of potentially of the crisis framing, and it may be that we can't do stuff, that we'll never get there, that there's just too much crisis work to be done, but we're also, I think, trying to hold out the hope that we'll still figure out how to function, to take our time, to do some more work beyond just passing a few bills that allow us to spend and raise money, and an overly narrow focus that ultimately could be detrimental to the long term for Vermont. And so that's still very much in the balance and still evolving as we try to figure it out.
And I think that what I would ask of all of you who are on this call and talking to other people is to try to hold on to both of those realities, that we need to do this crisis response now. We need to make sure that, essential workers have all the protective gear and the compensation that they need to keep on going, and that we're all getting the healthcare that we need, and all of that's essential. And we need to also be dreaming of the different future that has been sort of illuminated by all of the crisis that we're in. And need each of you to be able to hold a little bit of that as much as you can if we're going to be able to be sort of creative from the opportunities in this moment. And I know that's a big ask, and I know it's not something that all of us can do all the time, but like spending a moment in that in a day can really create some of the energy that we're going to need to be able to step out of this like stronger, safer community that has acknowledged that essential workers have value, for instance. Like for me, that's a huge opportunity that we're seeing right here. That we're, as a community, we've said out loud, essential workers matter, and like who these essential workers are. And so as we like hold on to that, really ask each of you to hold on to it too. Shall we pivot to questions now that I've gotten all philosophical?
So
Anyone? Beth. Yes.
this is, it wasn't intended to follow up on, with the retreat staff, but it is about the retreat. It's not just about the retreat, but it's about a question of hazard pay for very low wage earners like the childcare folks, because I know that, I mean, my contact is at the retreat, but I imagine that it's no different anywhere else, that the childcare workers are paid very little and are really right in what might be called harm's way, even though one wants to think that children aren't harmful. But anyway, that there's a question raised to me by a worker, and I said that this may be a place to ask. I did notice that Tim Ash referred to hazard pay yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before, but just wondering what you might know with the monies coming in from the feds that are undesignated or whatever.
This is something that we also talked about on the Montpelier Happy Hour with Olga yesterday, if anyone wants to have listen to a longer conversation about it. And so it's really sort of one of those situations that's been illuminated by this, that folks who are unionized are negotiating really successfully in a lot of places for hazard pay. And for some reason, a lot of places are not calling it hazard pay. They're calling it gratitude pay or like something that's fluffier and nicer. Hazard pay has like a long history of being part of collective bargaining. And so I like to use that phrase because I think it means something to people in, historically, and it's acknowledging the real hazard that people are in. And so we've seen City Market in Burlington just successfully negotiated hazard pay. And that's wonderful. And know that a lot of other collective bargaining units are working on that. In situations where it's state funding that provides most of the base for people's salaries. And so that would include childcare, that would include a lot of health facilities. I'm hoping that there are opportunities for expanding the monies that are available for hazard pay to be paid. Childcare workers are sort of notoriously difficult to organize. Unfortunately, and we know there was sort of that failed drive, I don't know, was that a decade ago? But there is significant money that is coming in this federal package for childcare, for early care and education, and I'm quite excited about that. Whether that goes to something that's specifically called hazard pay, or if it's going to sustain and grow our early childhood system through this crisis is not clear yet.
And I think like in different places, I mean, I know someone who's working in one of the schools and is receiving like a bonus pay for doing that. So
really,
I think it's probably not universal, but.
So Bob has got his hand up. And
thank you.
And so,
Bob, I'm sorry, will you keep your video off while you're talking? I really like seeing your face, but I can't hear you when your video's on.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
It's really much better, thank you. Sorry.
Okay. So the two-part question, one is probably a big question. The notion of using the new money for new things, can we think about using the new money for old things and calling them new, like healthcare? Because we could really refashion or redesign, not to coin a phrase, the healthcare system and use that money for that. Is that kind of something? Or a Vermont Green New Deal to boost employment? The other question, which is a little bit in the weeds, is with the 1099ers, are we doing anything specific or unique with 1099ers, separate apart from what the federal funds provide to all the states?
Bob, I'm going to answer your first question and part of your second question, then Tristan, can you? Okay. Because the second question was about 1099s, and maybe we can get you to repeat it or type it in the video chat because we lost a little bit of you on the end of that second question. So the way the new money works is it is officially not allowed to be used for things that were previously obligated, which is one of the reasons that we waited, the governor waited to sign that last package from us, because it would have been considered previously obligated otherwise. It's one of the reasons that we might take a while to pass our budget bills, because we don't want things to be considered previously obligated. The edges of that is exactly what we're trying to figure out right now. A lot of the education funding is going directly to schools. It's not going to go through the education fund. And so that's sort of one place where there might be some opportunities, but they'd be opportunities at the school level. They would not be opportunities at the state level. There's a lot of money that's coming not directly to Vermont's revenue stream, but going to the Economic Development Authority, which is sort of has regional hubs. That's a huge amount of infrastructure money that might have a lot of opportunities for creativity with broadband and other sort of Green New Deal type initiatives. And then, yes, we are trying to, we will absolutely sort of like, you know, patch together intention so that it seems like new ideas. And that's going to be necessary if we're going to even maintain a base level of services given the amount of revenue that we have right now. But I don't, and a Green New Deal would indeed be a brand new idea. It's not something that's previously obligated. So it's more that we can't use that money for things that we sort of do part of base funding year after year after year, because no one will fall for that.
One of the sort of models for this is when we had the ERA funds coming into the state and had to figure out, you know, what are the requirements around using them, and the state had a lot of, you know, forethought about how can we use these in the best possible way so that we can use these funds, free up state funds for money that we don't use the federal funds for the money that we have already put state funds to, and sort of move money around. So I think there's just a lot of planning and forethought to be done on that issue in general.
Mm-hmm. And then the second half was about, doing anything different for 1099s.
Yeah, so right. Yeah, so the question Bob asked was, is Vermont doing anything unique for 1099s other than what other states are doing? And so I may be wrong about this. I do not think so. I think we're following the federal funding is the one that's defining the rules. This is a space that Vermont has never, you know, we don't have a mechanism for independent contractors, self-employed, to participate in our unemployment insurance. There's not an opt-in to that. So we don't have any structure in place. We're responding to the federal structure that they've, you know, given us with their funding. It does open up a longer term question about, in an economy that has, you know, Vermonters have many times this kind of work. What is the long-term answer? But as far as I know, right now we're just following the federal guidance. And if Emily or Molly has something different to say.
Well, I just want to say that filling out the online application, it doesn't accommodate to an independent contractor at this point. So I'm sort of waiting to see what, you know, whether
they changed that on Thursday or Friday is what I understand. So if you did it before then.
Yeah, I've been trying to help some people through that, and assuming that it was just getting rolled out.
Yep. So it should be different this coming week than it was last week as they got clarity.
The one thing that I would say that I think we're doing differently just because we are different, not because we have a different set of rules, is that because our small business environment in Vermont is much smaller small businesses than other places in the country, we have what we call small businesses are actually micro businesses through any other even global lens on the issue. A lot of people who are able to file 1099s are also small business owners technically. And so those people are eligible for all of the small business assistance in addition to the 1099 assistance. And so that is something that I'm trying to really just sort of spread the word about, that there are a lot of opportunities for people to be making sure that they're getting their needs met, as well as sort of sustaining whatever business model they had. And I think in other states, the small business assistance landscape is much more competitive amongst, firms that have 250 employees is what a small business would be, whereas here it would be 2.
I think it's that emergency assistant disaster loan, maybe, that you're referring to, is one of the ones that can give small businesses like $10,000.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and there's more coming out that are Vermont specific through Vermont Economic Development Authority, but the ones through the SBA are some of the emergency assistance ones. And the easiest way to learn about those is to either be in touch with BDCC or go to the Agency of Commerce website. They have a really comprehensive list of options right now. And then knowing that some people, especially in Windham County and Brattleboro specifically, who run small businesses, don't really like following sort of the average small business track. I'm really happy to connect people with other more non-conventional business advisors if that's something that they need.
Yeah, and thank you, Emily. And there are definitely also ways that you can take advantage of those two in combination if you do it right. And there's questions of, it comes down to details about what you're asking for under one program versus the other program, particularly around payroll costs. But if you're asking for the disaster relief funds under that existing program that's been expanded to include COVID, and you don't use it for payroll, then you can use the payroll protection program for the payroll side of your expenses. So there's a lot of complexity to it. At the same time, from a lending or underwriting perspective, it's designed to try to be as straightforward as possible. Everybody pays the same rate. There's simple formulas for trying to figure out what you're eligible for and how to use it. And it's designed to be as dispersed quickly. So we'll have to see how it goes in the next week or so as the banks get used to handling this information, and whether the quality of the information that's up on ACCD, the Commerce and Community Development website, or other places is accurate and helpful. So please do give us feedback, this week or next weekend on our next call, if you're seeing on the ground challenges with that.
Other questions? Melissa, was that a hello or you have a question? Welcome. Anything anyone else would like to talk about? It can be unrelated to COVID if you'd like. Jerry. So Jerry had a comment that it would be nice to have a single portal that would provide links to all these various programs instead of having to find each of them separately. I think that was the great dream before we even wound up in a pandemic crisis. I totally agree. And it's been, that's been true. We've had legislation multiple years trying to find one portal for just, workers training programs that keeps on failing. 211 is an incredible place as a one-stop shop for all the links and resources for individuals. But it's remarkable to me how much people don't want to use it and how many people are still creating their own system for that. And I've certainly done that myself. I sent out a really comprehensive email with 50 links instead of just sending out an email that said, go to 211 if you have a problem. So I think that we're moving closer to having, repositories of links that are sort of issue specific. So commerce is absolutely the place to go to learn everything you need to know about all the links for small business assistance. And the Department of Labor is for sort of individual worker assistance. And, you know, the town is absolutely has a set of links set up that are sort of essential links for everyone who don't even know like what their need is and where to go from there. And but we would all, how many people live in Vermont?
625,000.
So 625,000 people would all need to agree to use a single repository of information if we were going to create it. And I think the libraries, Jerry, to, you know, speak to your past life and present life would be a great place for that to happen. But Americans don't like to do everything all in one place. And Vermonters like everything to be special.
Well, plus the computer, the lack of computer capacity. Some of the agencies are working on really old computers, systems.
Absolutely. But I would encourage people to use 211 for individual needs. It's a pretty amazing repository, and they have paid people who focus on like making sure their resources are up to date, which none of the other ongoing websites have the capacity to do.
And I just saw Jerry's post say, your chat post saying it has to do with, yes, it all has to do with personal and technological bandwidth. And I think every week in these public meetings, I want to acknowledge that there's just a tremendous burden that we're all carrying of trying to deal with this level of disruption in our lives, and how much that impacts our stress levels, our fatigue, you know, our sort of ability to navigate all of these different systems, you know, as we all adjust to this massive disruption. And I think it's important to keep giving ourselves permission to be overwhelmed or frustrated. You know, I have, maybe others have talked to people who are thriving in the crisis. I haven't talked to anybody who's like, my life is so much better right now than it ever has been. You know, like there's just, this is a really, really big challenge, one, you know, 100-year challenge level big, and we're right in the middle of it, and we haven't, you know, and I just think it's important to continue to give ourselves that permission.
It's also hard, like in terms of legislative work, where you realize when you're in the State House, you can go and talk to somebody, what's happening here, you get sort of up to the minute information, and now we're having to like run around and look at committee hearings on YouTube to hear what's happening, and it, you know, just that level, aside from the, you know, the level that everybody's experiencing day to day, I'm finding very frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
So any other questions or topics that people would like to bring up?
As we close, really, you know, towards what Jerry said and towards the issue of reliable information, I do not have the emotional or time capacity to troll Facebook for misinformation right now. But every time I go on there, I am terrified by how much misinformation there is about even what our state responses and state resources are. People are scared and getting really scarcity minded. And so there's some memes that are being shared about sort of what happened at the federal level that I think are really misguided. About sort of what unemployment benefits are going to be available for people, about health insurance that's available for people. Our Vermont Health Connect is wide open for anyone who experienced a change in circumstance, and eligibility paperwork is being significantly softened. So no one should be without health insurance right now. Our unemployment benefits should be meeting people's needs. Really just hope that you all can do your part to point people to reliable sources in this really scary time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it seems like we might have reached the end then. I do want to double check. I had Faith and Millicent join after I asked for permission to share this with BCTV, and I want to make sure that you're both okay if this video is shared with BCTV. It will only show your face, I think, if you're the active speaker.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Any last thing? All right, well, I'm going to turn the recording off, and I really appreciate all of you showing up yet again. It's really, really important to have your perspectives and to help us do our jobs well. So thank you so much.
And we're doing this
Thanks,
every week, so
Thanks,
please.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.